years. And just really more recently, I don't say recently, but had just really let it, just internalized it a lot more. And he says, for no people will tamely surrender their liberties, nor can they be easily be subdued, where knowledge is diffused and virtue is preserved. On the contrary, when people are universally ignorant and debauched in their manners, they will sink under their own weight without the aid of foreign invaders. So you think about that a little bit more, and it speaks to our responsibility to maintain virtue and knowledge. You know, we cannot shirk that responsibility onto saying, well, they didn't teach me that in school. Well, guess what? The accountability is on us. We have to be smart enough and bold enough to say, wait a minute here. There's more to this than what we're being told, than what I understand. And sometimes it's, sometimes even asking the questions we don't know how to ask, but we have to be willing to investigate and to get knowledge before we can do that. So that one has always been a good one. Chris Ann Hall, who's a person who teaches a lot on the Constitution, quotes that almost religiously, and I've just heard it almost like a punchline after a while, but it is so true when you start to think about it and what the responsibility for us really is. The next one is, and this comes from Thomas Jefferson. He says, I know of no safe depository of the ultimate powers of society but the people themselves. And if we think them not enlightened enough to exercise their control with the wholesome discretion, which is freedom of choice here, the remedy is to take it from them, or is not to take it from them, but to inform their discretion by education. This is the true corrective of abuses of constitutional power. And one thing that, I think Zen and many others, the Constitution is a great document, but think about what it actually is. This doesn't give us rights. We can throw this off to the side. God gives us rights. The Constitution is merely there to protect those God-given rights given to us. We have to be the ones to stand and say no more, here and no farther. If we don't, then we get what we get right now. So, and one other one that I didn't have pulled up, so I might butcher it a little bit, so forgive me if I do, but and that's Thomas Paine. He says, I know no other way to judge the future. I have no other lens to judge the future but by the past. So if we are not willing to learn from the past, and that's why Gentry did right there, reading through Scripture, we can see this happening throughout history, time and again. It repeats because we never seem to learn. We never want to learn from our forefathers. I'm glad to see some youth here. I wish we had more youth here, because this is what starts the chain. Because we can do so much, but if that next generation isn't going to do anything, it's not going to matter to a hill of beans. And that's what we've been. Is we've been kind of a debauched and petulant child, squandering our the freedoms that were fought for us through that revolutionary war. So, and even beyond that. So, having said that, that's what's kind of given us and our family a lot of motivation to learn and to move forward. So, with that, we kind of began the process. Well, how far back you want me to go exactly?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, rather than going too far back, but Aaron, I commend you for saying I'm not sure if my paperwork, how accurate it is. No matter even if you're with Zen, Anna, or whoever it is you're with, if you don't know the paperwork you held in your hand, then you're no better with it than without it. So it means nothing. If you're not going to understand it, it doesn't matter what you have, right? So the key to everything here is, even if you get paperwork done, it doesn't matter unless you know what's in that paperwork. So the journey does not end there; it begins there.
Yeah, I've learned more just since talking with Gentry a few weeks ago, and what I've learned on my own than I have from the meetings, which I quit going to, with them.
But they
not
were a
to put them
catalyst,
down,
but they were a catalyst at least, right?
Yeah. Oh,
They
yeah,
got you
yeah.
going in a direction, and that's good, but we have to continue to refine that, so, hence, which we as a group, had to do some learning as well. So, but our process began with Zen, where we first had to authenticate our birth certificates, okay? And that's a process where you'll request, at least 3 copies of your birth certificate,
Already got it.
and, or 5, or however many you feel you need, but at least 3. And then what you'll do is you'll send them off to, at least for the state of Utah, we send them up to the Lieutenant Governor's office, because we don't really have a Secretary of State of Utah, that's the Lieutenant Governor. And they will authenticate the document that you have. Once that authentication is done, that took us about 2-3 weeks, give or take.
You can do it on demand if you go
Or you can go
there
on-
in person and pay
Exactly
the
right.
extra fee. I
And
think
you're
it's
willing-
$75.
Yep, and you're willing to stand there and wait for them to do it, that's correct.
On
Yeah,
demand.
but otherwise by mail, 2 to 3 weeks, depending on their load. So once you get that back, then it's time to send it off to the federal government, and they'll send that off to Washington, and then they will then in turn
To the State Department.
to the state. Thank you, Ron. Yes, to the State Department, and they will then authenticate those documents together, and they will put a grommet in there. And what that does is it binds all those things, all 3 of those pieces of paper together now, and they become one. Once that is done,
And that can take 10 to 12 weeks.
yes, and so it just depends on their load. So
Or
I
free.
think for us, it took about 2 to 3 months
With the
for
feds.
us with the feds. So
Like-
again, I think some have had it happen a little bit quicker. Ours was about 2 to 3 months. So
So I've created a document that outlines all of this that I would like to get together and kind of do an online meeting and
now
just
I'm
flesh it out. So
awesome. Yep, and I'm just highlighting kind of what we went through, and and then for further specifics, we can get down to that. So thanks, appreciate that, Richard. And then once we have that accomplished and done, then it was next to develop our house seal. And you can really do this with, there's a lot of software technology where you can actually make your own house seal. It's very important. When people were leaving Europe to come to this country for the first time, they brought with them 2 things. They brought with them their Geneva Bibles, and they brought with them their house seals.
What is a house?
The
seal?
house seal is basically your signature. Any contract you enter into has to have the seal, otherwise the contract is null and void. It has no meaning. So every time you sign something, even right now, you're signing with basically nothing. It means nothing, ultimately.
So
Because
has-
that's a fiction of
covenant.
law that they've created through Roman civil law.
Right.
it's like
Without
the
your
king's
seal,
ring, the
Yeah.
king's ring, and you
Yep,
do wax
exactly.
Right.
and put that there,
That
his
was the
signet.
seal.
Same process.
So similar, but we use an ink stamp.
If you go back and look at the Declaration of Albarat, which is one of the declarations that our declaration was patterned after, it was Scottish. There are stamped seals across the bottom dangling from,
What do you
Parchment.
call the Declaration of what?
which tell the houses that were involved.
Okay.
This guy's house,
The Baron.
this baron, is affirming this document, right? It gives strength to something.
Correct.
So what are examples of contracts that we would use it in current day?
Well, so we're gonna kind of get beyond the scope, can I come back to that question? But yes, so any contract that you so choose to want to contract with. Because really what we're supposed to have in this country is nothing but 2-party contracts. I come to you and we figure out something that we want to do mutually beneficial for both of us. We agree to the terms and we sign and we seal, or in this case, that contract. And then unless one of us breaks said contract, that's what it is. It doesn't affect anybody else, it's just whatever you deem necessary to do so.
I was gonna say, for those that are new, a seal is more, like, it looks now like an embossing. It goes in, it has
So-
a handle and it'll clamp onto the paper
Oh,
and it
so when you
embosses.
go anywhere
Yeah,
else,
yeah,
when you go anywhere else, so when you go to get your BCs authenticated, the state is actually going to, by part of that authentication, they're going to put the state seal on there. Same thing with the federal government, they're gonna do those things. So when
It's
you go to
not valid
record,
without the seal.
exactly right. And when you go to record your documents, they're gonna put the seal on those pages that certifies those documents. So again, you're certifying something, you're approving of that. It has no bearing without it. So that's we're getting really a little more into the weeds.
Yeah.
But basically that's your next process. You get the house seal set, and then through Zen, he can provide all of the documents necessary to correct your status. Because right now, without a correction of status, because of the Siskiyou-Vi Act, and we can share that around too, that's
How do you
really
say
good.
that properly, Siskiyou-Vi?
And I may be butchering it, so, and he's recording me now of it too, so.
Okay.
But, more of a Latin term, I think, more than anything else, so, but anyway, because of that act, you are either pronounced dead or lost at sea. So that's why they presume to handle your estate through probate courts. And that's where they either assume their power. So until you come through and correct your status, which is what those documents do, saying, hey, I am found to be living, a living, breathing person. Here I am, Jamie Michael, House of Thomas. I exist. I am not dead at sea. I'm not lost. I am here. So, by so doing now, I can correct that assumption and now begin to take over my estate, which is now, because as you had, if you heard Gentry in part of the Edward Mandel House quote, he talked about how they were going to assess a value to everyone and then use that to make other investment values later on. So you can actually get your own bond number, you can find out where it is, and you can find out where you've been traded throughout. You have actually, every one of us here has what's called a CUSIP. Does everybody know what a CUSIP number is? Just raise your hand if you know what a CUSIP is. Okay, 1, 2, okay? It has to do with finance, okay? And basically that's how you would look up a stock or a bond, is by its CUSIP number. Well, guess what? You have a CUSIP number on you. And yep, it's basically a fiction that allows them to now sell you, so to speak.
Yeah, when I looked mine up, I had like 15,700 companies that had traded me and invested in me at one point.
And how do you find that out?
I can
So,
send you an
yeah,
email.
There's a great email for it, but essentially what we're trying to do is to bring that back to you, because you want to prove that you are the sole heir. Heir is very important, and that's what we're proving through the documents. So let me kind of get off of that. I don't want to get too far. I don't want to take up other time here. So, but you have great questions there, and keep them right close, because we want to answer them.
Ask and you shall receive.
Yeah.
Ask and you shall receive, but be careful what you ask for.
Yeah. So anyway, then what we did, we sent off, we gave, paid Zen. He gets paid in silver rounds, and then he sends you an information sheet. You fill that information sheet out, and then he will send you your status documents. From that point, you really want to sit down.
Who do those rounds go to, you said?
Is Zen.
Oh, Zen,
Yeah,
okay,
Zen.
that's the Zen master
Yep.
guy.
He deals only in specie money.
That's
You know,
fine.
gold and silver. That's what we're supposed to be dealing with. Or unless you want to barter for other goods,
No,
which you can do. That's fine. That's totally acceptable. But you want to stay away from fiat currencies.
I'm good on the rounds, no problem.
Okay. So anyway, then he'll send you your documents back, and they'll be tailored toward you and your house, or and if you have a spouse, to your spouse as well. And sorry, what's that?
And children too.
Yeah, and children. Well, you technically have to add the children yourself there, but yeah. Once you have those documents, then you'll go through and as you could probably have seen some of Gentry's going around. I don't know if you have any of them with your name on them or anything like that. Your seals, but
Yeah.
not a big deal. But anyway, you'll go through and you will sign and seal the documents on several pages, okay? Including your house seal on many of these pages. And then you will have witness quorums at that point. You will have people, again, validating, saying, hey, you're a witness. you saw me here, this is me, you're basically doing a coroner's inquest at that point to prove that you are living, because you are not dead. So, and only living heirs can receive anything, right? A dead person can't receive anything, can they?
That's why they're administering our estates, because they think we're all dead. So that's why
And that's why
we
it
have to
goes
pay them.
That's why it goes to a probate court, because you're assumed to be dead. So anytime, so for
probate.
example,
Or
if you have a
Yeah.
401k plan or anything like that, and you die, and you have no beneficiary listed, it goes to probate court. They will administer the dead estate at that point. So, once the documents are all sealed and you are aware of what you're doing, then you'll proceed. So that's really kind of, I think, a quicker part. You know, you can do a lot of this in a day as far as getting documents signed and sealed and things like that, and doing the coroner's inquest. It doesn't take very long at all. And then you'll go down to the recorder's office, and depending on the state you're doing them in the state of Utah, you have to have a notary in order to record those documents. Zen provides the notary document that you need, and you go down to the county recorder's office, which is a court of record. It is considered a court, an official court of record. Yes, in this case, it would be Manti, and you would record those documents. And they become a matter of public record. So right now, we can look, anyone who's recorded their documents here in Utah, we can look them up right now. And pull it up, and I can show you, and you'll see the exact documents. So after that, so that's really pretty quick. Usually takes them about a day to do one, and then you come back and you pick them up the next day. And that begins the process of changing your status. You know, now, and then from there on. So that's really pretty quick. I think the more lengthy part is the education part. Because how many of us, even though we have docs recorded, remember every aspect of every single page in those documents? The chuckle's funny, isn't it? And that's because there's a lot of information in there. And it's all really good. Take the time to know it, understand it. It's going to take some time, and that's okay. And that's kind of what our group does too, is to help each other understand what those documents mean, because that's what you're now going to stand upon. So when anyone questions anything, I stand on my documentation. I stand on what I am and who I am. And this is describing who I am.
And then understanding you.
Yep, if you go somewhere, they're going to, do you understand? Are you under something? No, you are over. I stand upon something. Right, so
Yeah, my
Anyway.
paperwork, speaking of that, I mean, it's like, I did blue and red and whatever the different thumbprints and all, but didn't even really get a chance to read the documents. It was done, so I don't even know what the document said.
Right.
I mean, so anyway.
yeah, so I highly recommend, even read through the existing ones you have, or if you get Zen's documents, please take the time, read through them carefully, understand what it is you're actually signing and sealing, and because if you get called into a court at any point, or you need to go to a court, well, the easy answer we usually like to say is, I stand upon my documents. But if there's further questioning, you might want to know what those documents have to say. So,
All 80+ pages.
yeah, for us it was 90. It was 90 pages each. So,
Yeah, ours were, what, 99? 95?
yeah, I think for us, for the state of Utah, it ended up costing us, well, I think it was $40 per doc, I believe. So for us, now everybody's a little bit different, because it'll depend on how many kids you have and how many birth certificates you're putting in there. Correct. That's correct.
Also, you have to do 2 sets of docs. So you have the first big set, and then the second set
It's
is
4
the,
pages.
yes, but it's still $40. But that's where we
Right.
record what we've recorded,
Right.
and also some other things. But yeah, so it's,
Right.
and then if you want a certified copy,
Yeah, and then there's additional, fees if you're going to have certified copies, which, but then you can go down at any time and get certified copies.
And those are all from Zen?
So yes, the initial documents are. After that, they're your documents, and then the certified documents you can go through the recorder's office to get those. And there's obviously a fee to get those certified copies. I know some people have mentioned that you know, you just make your own copy and then go down there and they'll certify them. Well, I have verified with them. I don't agree with them wholeheartedly with it because of the rationale that they gave me, but they will not certify your copies. They want to certify the ones they have on file. That's how they can guarantee that document. If you're missing a page, they say, well, then we can't, how are we certifying something?
Or
we're
it's
missing?
altered.
Or it's altered, right,
Yeah.
which is probably the bigger point, but anyway.
And the amount that they're charging is minimal compared to other states.
It really is. It's really not too bad. Knock on wood, let's hope it stays that way. So,
Yeah, we spent substantially more.
yeah. Yes, and in some states, there isn't a cost to record. I think if you go to Iowa, and possibly Wisconsin, I know Zen mentioned some other ones. He's got a list that you can look at, actually, if you get on the Gilded server. He has a ton of resources. One thing that's happened that we've learned is a lot of people try to reinvent the wheel. Well, Zen has already invented the wheel.
Is that
So-
the 1215.org?
No, that's the VSOF, Vocational Science of Freedom.
Oh, okay, that's what it.
1215.org is Bill Thornton. Bill Thornton.
Bill.
Yeah.
But it took a little bit longer than 10-15 minutes, but that was kind of our process, and that's where we sit at the moment. There's still more to come. As you heard, Yarringtons are working on passport information. There's a Lodio land title. There's suing out your livery, and a whole host of other things that we could spend hours upon hours tonight to discuss. But that's not the goal tonight.
Right.
So I don't want to take time away from our other guests here that we want to give time to, but just know that's kind of how our process went. I mean, so ultimately, if you really were buckled down with everything and you started, say, for example, in January, you could potentially be done with it, all by, April or May.
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky, right. If everything goes well and you have all your ducks in a row, but it takes a little bit of time. And most of it's the time of mailing and getting things back is what takes the time.
Awesome. Thanks, Jamie. Appreciate it.